Superior pond, superior care, your backyard retreat beyond compare. Minnesota's finest at your call. Your pond stays perfect all year long.
All right, so let's dive into something that I think hit really close to home for a lot of us Minnesotans this past winter.
Yeah.
Pond damage.
For sure.
Remember that brutal stretch we had with barely any snow?
Yeah, it was brutal.
Turns out that lack of snow cover was a recipe for disaster.
It was.
Even for those meticulous pond owners out there who thought they had winterized perfectly.
Yeah, I'm looking at an article here from Superior Ponds.
Okay.
They're a local pond care company, and they're saying that the frost this year went way deeper than usual.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're talking like a full foot deeper than what most folks consider like safe burial depth for pipes.
A whole foot. No wonder people were caught off guard.
Exactly. The Minnesota DNR reported frost depths hitting over 50 inches in some spots.
Oh, wow.
That's a lot deeper than usual.
Yeah.
And that kind of deep freeze puts immense pressure on anything containing water.
Right.
Because as we know, water expands when it freezes.
And I imagine that expansion turns into a real problem when it's happening inside pipes, pumps, and filters. Yeah. Those things aren't exactly designed to handle that kind of force, are they?
Yeah, you got it. We're talking about cracked pipes, pumps with busted impellers.
Okay.
That's the spinning part that moves the water.
Right.
And even skimmers, you know, those boxes that collect debris from the pond's surface, getting pushed out of place or even cracking.
So even if you followed the usual winterizing routine this past winter, could have thrown you a curveball.
Definitely. And the article highlights this with a story about a guy named Tom from St. Paul.
Okay.
He did everything by the book, winterized his pond like he always does, but still ended up with cracked pipes and a skimmer that was basically out of commission.
Oh, no, poor Tom.
Yeah, it was rough.
It just goes to show that even experienced pond owners can get caught by surprise. I'm already feeling anxious thinking about what I might find when things thaw out in my own pond.
Well, it's understandable to feel that way. A lot of folks are in the same boat.
Right.
So let's kind of unpack the different ways this deep freeze could have wreaked havoc. Starting with those frozen and cracked pipes.
Right.
What happened was even pipes buried at what's normally a safe depth froze.
Right.
Because remember that frost went down an extra foot in some places.
Yeah.
And once that water inside the pipe freezes, it expands and boom, you've got a burst pipe.
Ugh.
The University of Minnesota Extension has been warning folks about this for years.
Yikes. That's not a plumbing bill anyone wants to deal with?
No, it's not.
And I'm guessing pumps and filters are just as vulnerable to this kind of damage?
Oh, yeah.
They have lots of little nooks and crannies where water can hide, right?
Absolutely. Leaving a pump submerged, even in the deepest part of the pond, was risky this year. The article mentions that ice can crack those impellers we talked about,
right,
as well as the pump casing itself.
Oh, wow.
And any water left in a filter, even a tiny bit, could freeze, expand, and damage the seals and components.
This is starting to sound like a horror movie for pond owners.
It wasn't pretty.
Yeah.
And the damage doesn't stop there. Yeah. We also have to consider the skimmers and waterfalls.
Now, those are a bit more perplexing to me. How does freezing damage them?
So think of it this way.
Okay.
If water freezes around the skimmer box, that expansion puts pressure on the skimmer walls, potentially cracking them.
Okay.
Same principle applies to waterfalls.
Yes.
The spout and the features around it can crack if they aren't totally drained and protected.
So it's not just the water freezing inside, but the ice forming around that causes problems.
Exactly. And the article points out that even the ground itself can be an accomplice in this icy assault.
Ah, interesting.
Skimmers and waterfalls can actually heave up due to that ground frost.
Wow.
Especially if they weren't installed with good drainage to begin with.
So we've got pipes, bursting pumps cracking, and skimmers being pushed around by the frozen ground. It's like a perfect storm of winter woes for pond owners.
It really was.
What a mess.
And what's even trickier is that a lot of this damage might not be obvious right away.
Oh, no.
It's not always a dramatic geyser erupting from your pond when things thaw. Sometimes it's a slow leak or a pump that's not working quite right.
So this is where my anxiety is really kicking in.
Yeah.
What should we be looking for come springtime to see if our ponds took a hit this winter?
That's the million-dollar question, right? The article gives some really helpful advice on this.
Okay.
First and foremost, pay close attention to your water level.
Right.
If your pond is suddenly much lower when you turn your system back on, that's a red flag. You could have a cracked pipe or a damaged seal somewhere.
Okay, water level check. What else should we be on the lookout for?
Your pump is another key indicator.
Okay.
If it doesn't start up, makes unusual noises, or just isn't performing like it used to,
Yeah.
that could be a sign of ice damage to the internal components.
Got it.
And while you're at it, give your skimmer and filter a good once-over, looking for any cracks or leaks.
So basically, we need to be detectives looking for any clues that something might be off.
Exactly. Pay attention to how the water is flowing through your skimmer and waterfall, too. If it's different than usual, maybe slower, weaker, or uneven,
Right.
it could mean something has shifted due to that ground heaving we talked about. And of course, any visible pipes should be inspected for cracks or damage.
It sounds like this springtime inspection is going to be crucial. Catching these problems early could save us a lot of headaches and repair costs down the road.
You've got that right. It's always better to address these issues sooner rather than later.
Well, this has been a sobering reality check. But let's move on to something a little more hopeful: prevention.
Okay.
What can pond owners do to avoid this icy nightmare next winter? Because I, for one, do not want a repeat of this spring's anxiety.
I hear you. And luckily, the article outlines some key preventative measures that can make a world of difference.
Okay. Yeah.
It all starts with the plumbing.
Okay, so plumbing is public enemy number one when it comes to winter pond damage. What exactly can we do to make sure those pipes survive the deep freeze?
Well, it all comes down to two key factors: proper burial depth and making sure those pipes are sloped correctly.
So even deeper than what we thought was safe before?
Unfortunately, yes. This past winter was a wake-up call. We might need to bury pipes a full foot deeper than previous recommendations.
Wow.
To account for those deeper frost lines. It's better to be safe than sorry, especially when you consider the cost of digging everything up and replacing a burst pipe.
Yeah, a foot deeper.
Eh.
That's quite a change. And what about sloping? Why is that so important?
It's all about drainage. Imagine your pipes like a water slide. You want a nice, smooth slope downward so any water left in the pipes can completely drain out.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's like having a little puddle trapped inside, just waiting to freeze and expand, which, as we know, is bad news for those pipes.
So no low spots, no trapped water. Got it. What if you already have a pond and aren't exactly keen on redoing the entire plumbing system?
The article mentions a clever workaround for that:
Okay.
installing relief valves at the lowest points in your plumbing. Think of it like a safety valve, allowing you to drain those trouble spots completely before the deep freeze sets in. It's a bit of extra work, but it could save you a major headache down the line.
I'm all about preventative measures, so I'm definitely filing that tip away. But even with proper sloping, I imagine moisture can still find its way back into the system.
Yeah.
Especially in a place like Minnesota, where we have freeze and thaw cycles throughout the winter.
You're right. Moisture is sneaky like that. That's why the article stresses the importance of capping your pipes.
Okay.
Once you've drained everything, thoroughly cap those pipes using threaded plugs or special winter caps. It's like sealing a jar. Keeps everything dry and protected. This past winter showed us that even a tiny bit of water left behind can cause major damage when it expands.
Okay. I'm adding pipe caps to my shopping list as we speak. So plumbing is taken care of. What about those other vital organs of the pond pumps and waterfalls?
Those are next on our winterization checklist. We've talked about how vulnerable pumps are to ice damage, especially those delicate impellers. Leaving them submerged in freezing water is playing with fire.
So what's the solution? Do we wrap them in tiny sweaters?
I wish it were that simple. The best course of action is to remove your pump entirely before the first hard freeze. Here in Minnesota, that usually means late October or early November. Drain it completely, store it indoors, maybe even in a bucket of water, to prevent the seals from drying out, especially if it's an older pump. Out of sight, out of mind, and safe from those icy clutches.
Okay, that makes sense. A little inconvenient, but definitely worth it to avoid a broken pump. And what about waterfalls? Should those be shut down for the winter too?
Absolutely. It's the same principle as the pumps. Any water left in the waterfall system can freeze and cause damage, not just to the waterfall itself, but also to the surrounding features. So turn off the water supply, drain everything, and let those waterfalls hibernate for the winter.
All right, so we've covered plumbing pumps, waterfalls. Anything else on the pond owner's winter to-do list?
We can't forget about aeration and de-icing. These are often considered essential for ponds with fish. But I'm curious, do you use them in your pond?
To be honest, I don't have any fish. So I've always thought, why bother? You know, with the extra equipment and electricity cost.
That's a common misconception. This article really opened my eyes to the benefits of aeration and de-icing, even for ponds without fish.
Really? Tell me more. I'm intrigued.
Think of it this way. An aerator keeps the water circulating beneath the ice. This prevents stagnation and reduces pressure buildup in the system. It's like giving your pond a little breathing room even when it's covered in ice.
So it's not just about oxygen for the fish, it's about protecting the overall structure of the pond.
Exactly. All that freezing and thawing puts stress on the liner, the rocks, even the concrete around the edges. An aerator helps to minimize that stress, keeping things more stable throughout the winter. And a de-icer works in conjunction with the aerator to maintain an open hole in the ice, allowing harmful gases to escape.
Wow, I never thought of it that way. I'm starting to think I might need to invest in these things even without fish.
It's definitely worth considering, especially if you live in an area with harsh winters like we do here in Minnesota. The peace of mind is worth the investment, trust me. But you can't just pick any aerator and de-icer. It's important to choose the right wattage based on the size of your pond.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Yeah.
You really need to consider the specific dimensions of your pond.
Absolutely. A smaller pond, under 1,000 gallons, might only need a 250-watt de-icer, while a larger pond could require 750 watts or more. And placement is key, too. Don't put them too close together, or the aerator could cool the water down too much, making the de-icer work harder.
Interesting. So strategically placing these devices is crucial for optimal performance.
You got it. And the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources actually recommends aeration as one of the most effective ways to prevent winter kill in ponds, even during deep freezes.
So it's a win-win protection for the fish and protection for the pond itself.
Exactly. By taking these preventative steps, burying pipes deeper, ensuring proper drainage, capping those pipes, removing pumps, shutting down waterfalls, and considering aeration and de-icing, you can significantly reduce the risk of damage and ensure that your pond is ready to go come spring.
This has been incredibly helpful. I'm feeling much more prepared to tackle winterization this year.
Superior pond, superior care, your backyard retreat beyond compare. Minnesota's finest at your call. Your pond stays perfect all